In this example, I have three columns, namely items, branch, and cost, and I need to calculate for the average cost per item per branch. In order to do that, let me use average ifs. But before we do the equation for the average ifs, let's add name manager for each column to simplify the input. To start with, for the items, let me highlight B3 to B10 and name this as items on the name box. Press enter. Next, let me highlight C3 to C10 branch. And last, let me highlight D3 to D10. This is cost. Now, how can we calculate for the average ifs? You can simply type equal average ifs and then open parentheses. Average ifs contains a maximum of 127 criteria in one equation. It starts with an average range. In this case, the average range is the cost column, comma. So what are the criteria range? Criteria range number 1, let me start with items. Specific item for criteria 1, that is laptop. However, I need to move the formula to the right up to the column of Davao and down below up to the row of tablet. In order to make it consistent, let's add $sign before letter F. All items is positioned in column F. That's why I need to fix the cell reference in column F by adding $sign. Let's type comma. Next, let's add branch. Specific branch, that is Manila. Cell G2. Manila, Cebu, Davao is designed horizontally in this table. Alright, that means I need to fix in the row so that the formula is consistently looking up on the value of row number 2, wherein we can find the value of Manila, Cebu, and Davao. Alright, now if you're done, close parenthesis, and then let's autofill. What you can see is the average of all cost per items per branch. But we still have one more problem. We need to get rid of the div0 symbol. Div0 is an error message wherein, since we're using average ifs contains a division factor. And one of the input, or maybe three of the inputs here are with 0 transaction. Tendency is average will divide the data into 0. That's why we have an output of div0 in the table. How do we remove these error messages in Excel? Let me go back to the formula and add in if error function. If error function contains two syntax, value and the value if error. In this case, the value is the Averageifs function. Let me type comma on the last part of this equation. For the second part of the equation of if error, that is the value if error, or the replacement that you want to use for the error message. In this case, let me type in 0. 0 will be replaced. Div0 will be replaced by 0 in this equation. So when I press enter and then autofill, Excel will remove all error messages in my table. All right. Now let me give you one more example. Let's go to example number 2. How about if we have 3 criteria? One for items, branch, transaction date. Okay. So our objective this time is to still get the average of total cost per item per branch. However, I want to filter in based on the date. Let's say I just want to look into the average of first quarter. So how do we do that? Let's start with highlighting B3 to B10. Let me use name manager here, but this time, let me just type in IT short for items. Next, let me highlight C3 to C10. This is BR for branch. Let me highlight transaction date TD for transaction date. And for cost, let me type in CO for cost. All right, I use abbreviation because some of the column names are already existing. We cannot repeat the names in the same worksheet. All right, that's why I'm using a different name, BR, CO, IT, and TD. Now, to start with the formula is equal to average ifs, open parenthesis, for the average range, that is CO, comma, criteria range, we need IT, comma, criteria is laptop, vertically aligned, add dollar sign before the letter. That's dollar sign, comma, criteria range number 2 is BR, comma, criteria 2 is Manila, horizontally aligned, add dollar sign before number 2. And then let's try to look at the output of this one first. Let me press enter. So this is what we have earlier, all right, with the zeros. And comparison to example 1, all right, we'll add if error to remove the error messages. But before that, how can we add a date filter for the report? Let's say I just want to look at the average of the first quarter data based on transaction date. If you need to add date filters in average ifs, let me use this cell reference and type here greater than or equal to January 1, 2021 and less than equal to March 31, 2021. All right, so this cell, let me name this as start. This one, let me name this as end. All right, both cells can be used as part of the formula. Okay, now inside Averageifs function, we can add criteria range 3 and 4. 3 is referring to the start date, 4 is referring to the end date. How do we do that? Go back to formula Averageifs, before closed parenthesis, type comma, and type TD for transaction date, comma, click or type start, comma, TD, transaction date, and comma, end. All right, anything in between January 1, 2021 and March 31, 2021 is added as a filter inside the Averageifs. So lastly, let me include here the if error function. Let me move a little bit here. If error, open parenthesis, the end of the line, add 0 and close parenthesis. All right, so here's the formula for Averageifs. Let us move it for a while so that you can see the entire equation. All right, we started with an if error again because we want to get rid of the div 0. Averageifs, we use that with 3 criteria. All right, first is for the item, second is for the branch, and third is for the transaction date. For the transaction date, we added criteria range number 3, TD start, and criteria range number 4, which is TD end. Okay, anything in between those items will be filtered. So when I pressed enter, autofill, you will notice that Excel will filter the data and just display the average cost on a first quarter basis. Anything that is belong to this given transaction date. Let's say if I change this to first half of the year instead of December 31 or March 31. All right, what you can see is the average cost, all right, per item per branch from from January 1, 2021 to June 30, 2021. I need to look from first to third quarter. The end date is September 30. So what you can see now is the average cost per item per branch from January 1 to September 30. Lastly, if I need to display the annual result, I can always go back to December 31 as my end date, press enter. And that's what we have for the average games.